Amat merat ike tesolderat ikmerut.
Hey, all Dave here. It's been a minute since I did another part in this Enlightio series of questions for atheists, so I thought I should probably pull my finger out a little and get another part done. We're getting close to the end of the series now. This is part 4, and the previous parts will be listed in the description as well in the playlist. I had a quick look at the questions, and there are some pretty interesting ones in there. And as you can tell, I also have a new background behind me. This is because my amazing partner has bought me a new desk, so I now have a permanent home for the laptop and whatnot. You might also notice some sound difference qualities, and I apologize for that. I'm still trying to get used to the new setup. But let's get on with answering the questions now. Question 31. Do you believe that morality is objective or subjective? Okay, so I've spoken about something similar to this in another video, but I'll quickly go through some of my thoughts again here. I find the subject of morality and ethics to be pretty fascinating. It's one of those topics that made me want to actually study philosophy. It's also a very complicated topic. When you look into it, you find realism, anti-realism, deontology, consequentialism, virtue ethics, moral particularism, moral fictionalism, and many other accounts of morality. It becomes complicated very, very quickly. Before I start, I'll just define here what I mean by objective and subjective, as I see it used very differently by some other atheists and skeptics. Often I'll see atheists and skeptics using objective to mean not from a mind or independent of a mind, and subjective to mean from a mind. These are perfectly valid ways to use the term, of course, but they aren't how the terms are generally used in ethics when discussing morality. Within ethics, subjective morality means that the truth of moral statements is derived from personal opinion, and objective morality means that the truth of moral statements is not based on personal opinion, it's based on something outside of personal opinion. So this is roughly how I use the terms. With that said, I think it's a bit of both, in both a theoretical and a practical sense. In a theoretical sense, I think that there are certain actions that just are immoral, regardless of culture, time, or opinion. One could argue here that this is still just an opinion, and you know what, to some degree, I'll agree. However, I think when discussing what is good and what is right, there are certain things that just are good and right. It seems to me to say that something like the Holocaust or the Rwandan genocide being bad is simply a matter of opinion is a faulty claim. To say that these things are good is something that's just incredibly counterintuitive to me. Of course, this could simply be learned behavior on my part and still be an opinion, but reasoning and logic leads me to this position. So I think that there are certain actions that are right and wrong based on good reasoning and logic, and this reasoning makes them right and wrong regardless of opinion. Something akin to, say, deontology or consequentialism or virtue ethics. Arguing for these things is a little bit harder, of course, and there are good arguments from all camps in ethics. But like I say, my intuitions are what ground my opinions here, along with my reasoning. I also think that there is a certain level of objectivity to morality, even in just a practical and descriptive sense also. This objectivity exists in a relative way, but it still exists. I think moral judgment is one of those things that exists in tiers, and at multiple levels and in multiple contexts. I think morality exists in a pluralistic way, and trying to pin it down to one theory only, or only subjective or objective, misses out on the complicated web that both morality and humans exist in. Question 32. What do you think about the fact that so many people throughout history have believed in God? I think it's kind of interesting, if I'm honest. Asking the question only in terms of God misses out on the idea that humans have a propensity for believing in higher powers in general. Throughout the ages, humans have given agency to all manner of things in the form of gods, and believed in all manners of gods. While the idea of a monotheistic God is most certainly one of the most prevalent beliefs in the world, especially when we consider the number of followers of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, we can still see other beliefs like Buddhism that are prevalent in other countries. And this kind of shows you how much the culture can influence what we believe when it comes to gods, and why we believe those particular gods, higher powers, spiritual beliefs, and the like. For the most part, I think that in the years gone by, and before we began systematically exploring the world we live in through scientific endeavors, we had a tendency to attribute the world we live in to powerful beings capable of creating and managing the natural world we see around us. Inductively speaking, this kind of makes sense. Think of something like the watchmaker argument or an architect style argument. We see us having to build intricate things. The universe is an intricate thing, therefore something powerful must have built it. Arguments like this are pretty intuitive and have some intuitive force depending on what we know about the universe. God and gods help to explain the universe and the world around us. Something like God can also help to give meaning to the world around us. The idea that there is this maximally powerful being that has everything under control in a world that we have no control over is a powerful idea. The idea that there is an afterlife can also be a powerful thing, as the hurt and loss of loved ones dying is painful. Thinking that our relatives have gone to a better place is a much more pleasing idea than the idea that they just no longer exist or will be forgotten about a given time. The same can be said of cruel tyrants or vicious people getting the justice that we feel they deserve. A universal justice that balances the scales is a powerful idea too, and another one that we see throughout the ages. So what do I think of the fact that so many people throughout history have believed in God? I think God is an idea that answers a lot of questions, and gives a lot of hope, and is learned through culture, and gives people meaning. It's not a surprising fact to me that so many people have, and still do, believe in God. I would probably actually be more surprised if people didn't. Question 33. If there's no God, why is there something rather than nothing? This is one of those questions that atheists get asked a lot, and there is this odd notion for many theists that atheists believe that the universe came from nothing. However, most atheists I know, and that includes me, do not believe that the universe came from nothing. My own view is that there was never a time when there was nothing. Both theists and myself agree with this. Theists attribute it to God, but I believe that there has always existed something physical. What that physical thing is, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure how it all works. I'm not an astrophysicist or anything like that. But I don't believe that there was ever a time when there was nothing physical. And as far as I'm concerned, God does not answer the question of something coming from nothing either. Question 34. How do you explain the existence of consciousness? I think consciousness is simply an emergent property of brains and nervous systems and the types of beings that produce these systems. There is definitely still much to be explained about consciousness and about the mind. But all the evidence, at least to me, seems to point towards some kind of material explanation. The explanatory gap and the hard problem of consciousness are both things that exist, and I don't currently have an answer that satisfies me completely. But even with those things, I still lean towards a physicalist explanation, even if panpsychism seems to be gaining popularity. Question 35. What do you believe? Okay, so I'm not really sure how to answer this one, as I'm not really sure what's being asked of me. What do I believe about what? I feel it's probably in reference to consciousness, but I'm not entirely sure. If it is about consciousness, I've sort of answered that in my previous response, I guess. Question 36. Do you believe that science and religion are compatible? As with many questions like this, the answer is kind of complicated. I don't think the conflict hypothesis is accurate, and I don't think religion in and of itself is incompatible with science. I think most religions are compatible with science, at least the ones I know of anyway. With that said, though, I think there are plenty of religious beliefs and variations and believers that are incompatible with scientific things and findings. Something like young earth creationism is the most common example that springs to mind here, or those variations of religions and religious beliefs that deny evolution or teach the denial of vaccines, for example. These are things I would consider incompatible, but it would be far too hasty to generalize all religions, religious beliefs, and even followers as being similar to young earth creationists or evolution and vaccine deniers. Question 37. What do you think is the most important thing to focus on in life? Okay, so I wish I had an easy and snappy answer to this one, but unfortunately I don't. Answers I give would sound trite to someone in a far less privileged position than I am. I'm healthy-ish, I have a home, I have an incredible partner who is incredibly supportive and caring, and many other things. Meaning that the things I speak about being important come from within that. For others in a less privileged position, what is important to focus on will be very different to what I think is important to focus on. And I know this from experience because I haven't always been in the position that I am today. So I'll answer from this perspective I'm in now, and with the understanding that I am not a self-help guru and I'm only explaining the things I find important. For me, the most important thing to focus on in my life is leaving the world a little better each day in the many ways that I can. I try to help my neighbors, I spend time saying hello to them and speaking to them. I try to do as many little things as possible, as the little things are important and build up. I also think that it's important to focus on education and spend much of my time doing my best to become more educated. I think it's important to focus on making sure those close to us are happy, and important to focus on supporting and encouraging others to be who they want to be and the best people they can be. I think charity is important to focus on. Like I said, the most important thing to focus on in my life is just making the world a better place each day in whatever ways I can, given the position I'm in. There are those here that might argue that as an atheist I have no grounding for these things, or that there is no reason in atheism for atheists to do these things. And I know I should probably address that, but that will be for another time and another video. Question 38. What do you think is the best way to live one's life? In whatever way that enables you to flourish as best as possible without causing too much harm to others. Life and circumstances are far too varied to be able to say this is the best way to live one's life. Question 39. How do you respond to the argument that atheism is just another form of religion? So this will probably annoy many atheist viewers of this video, but I can understand the assertion to a certain degree. It most certainly isn't a religion. But I think there are certain groups that fall under the banner of atheism and skepticism that have taken on a very religious-like element. I have various videos discussing it on my channel, and you can find me discussing it on the Answers and Reason channel also. In general though, atheism simpliciter doesn't really meet enough of the items on this is religion checklist. Although with that said, just like many other things, like a game or a chair, it's hard to come up with a definition of religion that covers all examples of it. There is more of a family resemblance thing that goes on when it comes to religion, which is why I mentioned that there are certain groups where the resemblance is far closer in atheism than it ought to be. Question 40. What do you think is the most convincing evidence for atheism? I don't really like this kind of question for the same reason that I don't really like a question like, what's the best argument for theism? When it comes to atheism, it isn't a particular piece of evidence or a particular argument that is convincing. It is the cumulative case that makes it convincing. It is a collection of arguments that make the case stronger for atheism than for theism, at least for me. And I'm speaking of atheism in the philosophical sense here, or the idea that God does not exist. For me, it's a collection of divine hiddenness, various kinds of problem of evil arguments, the incoherence of concepts like God, the human propensity to assign agency where there is none, the many religions that have arose throughout the years, the ability for naturalism to explain what I see around me much better than theism, and much, much more. So there we have it, another 10 questions from the list answered. We're actually coming to the end of this one soon. Hopefully I'll have found some more to cover by then, and hopefully I will have got back to the series on logic and the series on fallacies soon. I haven't had much of a response, so I'm not really sure how many people actually want me to keep going. I was also on Godless Granny's channel recently, and there's a link to that in my community tab for anyone who might be interested in checking it out. I'll see you all again soon, hopefully. Until then, I hope life treats you well. Take care. Bye.